Joining us now is Andy Puzder. He is CEO of CKE Restaurants and someone who advises the Trump campaign on economic policy. Welcome to the program, Andy. Good to have you here.
Thanks, David. Good to be here.
Let's start with those 25 million jobs that Donald Trump has said that he would help create. We're about to get jobs numbers here in less than an hour, about 55 minutes from now in the United States. As I see the numbers coming out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we only have 7.9 million unemployed. How would you fill those 25 million jobs?
Well, you have to not just look at the number of unemployed. You have to look at people that are out of the labor force. If you haven't looked for a job in 30 days, you're not considered in the labor force. And there are tens of millions of people who aren't in the labor force. We've got about 6 million people out of the labor force who would like a job now. We've got another 5 or 6 million people that are working part-time for economic reasons because they can't find a full-time job. So there's plenty of opportunity to create 25 million full-time jobs. Look, there are a lot of people out there that would love to have a job that can't find one right now or can't find one that pays them enough that they want to take the job.
Andy, in the history of the country, have we ever gotten to the level of full employment that you're describing, where all the people who would like to have a job actually are employed? And how would Mr. Trump get to that sort of level?
Well, you don't have to get to the point where everybody who wants a job is employed. But look, the labor participation rate was 65.7% when President Obama took office, and when the recession ended in June of 2009. It's been under 63% for over 2 years. So it hasn't been that low since Jimmy Carter was president. So we've got a lot of room to move. You move that 2 or 3%, you're talking about employing tens of millions of people. You can get to this 25 million more people employed number. You've just got to present them with jobs and careers that people want, that people are willing to go out and fight for, that they're willing to get the training for. So there's huge opportunity here.
Well, then that brings the question of whether or not what we're seeing in the economy is structural versus cyclical. Take a look at the Bloomberg here, and I've charted payrolls versus U.S. GDP. The U.S. GDP is that orange line, payrolls that white line, Andy. You keep having payrolls continuing to climb, but GDP stagnates. Why are you so convinced that this is a structural issue and not just stagnant growth?
Look, stagnant growth is a huge problem. When you're coming out of a recession, you want GDP to be above the average because it's below the average during the recession. If you're going to recover, and it's called a recovery, you've got to take it above. The average has been about 3%. So you're not...
What if this is actually structural and that we're just going to see lower growth for longer? We're not going to get back to the 3%, 4% that we've seen last time in the labor market when it was actually this good.
Well, I tell you why it's structural, because we have tax policy where people are trying to redistribute income instead of incentivize investment, which is why GDP's down, because we don't have investment. Trump would turn that around. Because we've got an energy policy that looks more towards trying to solve the world's climate change problem than bringing about energy independence in the United States. That's not structural, that's policy. We've got a regulatory state that has grown to the point where businesses are under a huge burden that they need to get out from under, including what's happening with Obamacare, which is doing significant damage to the country. That's structural, but it's based on Obama administration policy. And then you've got trade deals that have generated these massive trade deficits. And now trade is great, and even trade deficits are okay, but massive trade deficits hurt America's working and middle class. So with tax policy, energy policy, regulatory policy, and trade policy, of course GDP is stagnated. That's why we need a change. That's why we need new policies.
Well, Andy, let's talk about...
With this structure, that'll never go up.
Sorry, let's talk about that trade policy specifically, because we've had enormous growth in this country during liberalization, actually, of international trade. Is it possible to eliminate that sort of deficit without curtailing international trade, and what would that do to U.S. economic growth?
Well, the problem with growth due to international trade is that while it benefits the wealthy because the cost of goods go down, and it benefits people that are on fixed incomes, fixed government incomes, because the price of goods go down, it really hurts middle and working class Americans because they take the brunt when wages go lower, because they're now competing with people overseas, where there are lax environmental policies, where there are people that are willing to work for far less than you would work in the United States. And the big large corporations take advantage of that. Corporations with global trade deals take advantage of that. But it's hurting working and middle-class Americans, which is holding down economic growth, which is holding down wages, which is holding down employment. So what we need to do is get a more balanced, a fairer trade policy. It's not that trade is bad. The problem is stupid trade is bad. And what we've got now is a lot of stupid trade.
So, Andy, finally, we're now less than 50 minutes away from the job numbers. Let's take us into your business a little bit. What are you seeing in terms of employment? Are you hiring people, and what's happening to wages in your restaurants?
Well, we've actually, wages are going up slowly in the restaurant industry because people are competing for better employees. We want to hire better and better employees. But the fact of the matter is this year, the restaurant industry is going through something of a restaurant recession. Traffic's down about 3%. There was some research out of a group called Civic Science that showed that it's basically due to increased Obamacare premiums, that people are not going to restaurants as often. So restaurant growth generally is down, and it's a problem. It's a very significant problem that we need to address.
All right, Andy, thank you so much for joining us. Andy Puzder,
My pleasure.
CEO of CKE Restaurants.